Mr. Miller, you're for the Broadwater project.
I think it's a good project, yes. I think it's a good project for a couple of reasons, in my opinion. Frankly, the business that I run, it's a small business in Port Jefferson, a commercial workboat fleet. We have a fleet of about 10 vessels that support the energy industry. We provide a service for the oil tankers that come into Long Island Sound, transportation needs, ship spare parts, freshwater delivery. We do some other things also, underwater cable repair, gas pipe repair, and installation. And far and foremost, we're a oil spill response company. We deploy oil boom and respond to oil spills, grounded tankers, etc. The project itself, and I am a resident of Long Island. I live in Mattatuck. And frankly, we all know we need the power and energy in Long Island. And it is an alternative fuel to fossil fuel, which certainly wouldn't hurt us at all. It's another resource for bringing energy into this region. I do see that as a positive thing. I work in the marine industry. I'm a merchant mariner, and I've been in the industry for over 30 years, and I'm familiar with a lot of the folks in the industry of LNG, and I see it as a very, very positive, a very safe-oriented industry. We work in the Sound almost every day with our work vessels, and I see it as a rather benign impact from an environmental standpoint, as I do work here, and I do see it as a benefit for certainly the industry that I work in and the creation of jobs and for the business that I run here in Port Jefferson and Long Island.
Now, some people looking at this will say, well, because Mr. Miller's company would benefit from Broadwater with your workboats and all the kind of stuff you do, that kind of, I don't know, slants your perspective.
Oh, I would definitely see how somebody could see it that way, but it's a fact. It's what I do for a living. It's what I've done. I support the marine industry and the merchant industry here on Long Island, but I'm also a resident on Long Island. I love where I live. I live in Mattatuck. I own horses. I ride on the beach all the time, and I know one of the oppositions, and maybe I have a clearer perspective of it because I am in the industry. You know, a lot of folks say, "Gee, what a horrific eyesore it'll be 9 miles off Wading River." Well, it really can barely make that image out that far off the beach. It's no different than an average ship that you'd see would cross Long Island Sound any day of the week. You barely would even recognize it. It would be smaller than your pinky, nail. I don't see it as an obtrusive visionary thing at all. And again, from knowing that we certainly need the energy here on Long Island, I see that as a benefit.
Legislator Ed Romaine, this Broadwater facility would be in your county legislative district.
Yes, it would. If we can pan and look at the map behind us, it's 9 miles off the coast of Wading River, which is totally in the 1st legislative district. It is something that everyone in this district is concerned about. Most people are opposed to. It would be industrializing the Long Island Sound further than it already is. The Long Island Sound is one of the 15 national estuaries that we have in this country. We don't need to have a floating gas barbecue grill in the Long Island Sound. Just my view, because this gas that Broadwater wants to bring in is not going to be used on Long Island. The majority of this gas is going to be used elsewhere in the tri-state region. We don't need this for our energy future. And I think it's the wrong location, at the wrong place, by the wrong company, at the wrong time.
It's curious that it's on the New York State part of the Long Island Sound. It's not, well, just a mile or two, it would be in Connecticut.
Absolutely. It's just over the borderline because Connecticut would simply not allow this type of thing to be there. In fact, they've joined, many Connecticut organizations have joined with citizens in New York to fight Broadwater. And right now, we're waiting for Governor Spitzer to make up his mind and weigh in this decision. We're all praying that the governor will join with so many of our local officials in opposing Broadwater.
Now, Broadwater argues that the natural gas it provides, even if most of it doesn't go to Long Island, most of it goes to New York City, Connecticut, and so forth, it's still necessary.
Natural gas is necessary, but we get it from a lot of sources domestically. We have pipelines running throughout the United States and pipelines running from Canada, including the Iroquois gas pipeline that runs not only from Canada, but also across under the Long Island Sound to New York, and we have the Islander East gas line that is going to come from Connecticut across and land at Shoreham, and we have another gas line coming from New Jersey. So we are served by more than enough natural gas lines. They're not talking about supplying natural gas. They're talking about another method to supply natural gas. We have more than enough natural gas supplies available to Long Island.
Now, your Suffolk legislature has passed a number of resolutions opposed to the Broadwater project, and Suffolk County is in the midst of litigating on the basis of an old 1881 law.
Yes, old law that says that the county has control of the sound bottom, and we can regulate that. And this is one thing that we want to regulate against. We do not want this floating barge tethered to the sound bottom. This barge, when it's tethered there, will be getting 2 or 3, maybe 4 deliveries a week of huge natural gas, liquefied natural gas tankers coming in, and it will be further industrializing the sound. It becomes a terrorist target. Furthermore, it becomes a security concern because now no one can do any recreational boating. The lobstermen can't do their thing. The commercial fishermen, recreational fishermen are all restricted. A large area around this barge. Who's going to patrol that? At what cost? The Coast Guard?
Broadwater says, well, it's 9 miles from Suffolk County. I mean, it's in the middle of the Long Island Sound. Even if there's a catastrophe, it's so far offshore it's not going to be a huge problem.
Good. Put it somewhere else.
Sid Bale is the president of the Wading River Civic Association and a leader of the anti-Broadwater Coalition. Now, it might be claimed that this is a matter of not in my backyard, NIMBYism.
Oh, who said that? No, I don't think it is, Karl. I think Wading River came into the picture because we were used in the initial press release as a reference point. The project, the FSRU, is supposedly 9 miles off of Wading River and 11 miles from Branford, Connecticut. But to view this as Wading River's concern or Branford, Connecticut's concern really oversimplifies this issue. There are larger regional and national issues, implications concerned with this project.
Spell them out.
Well, for instance, how dependent do we want to become on another imported fossil fuel? When you talk about energy independence, this LNG is going to be coming from the same areas of the world that our oil is coming from. And we're going to be propping up such bastions of democracy such as Nigeria, and where Shell in particular hasn't done a very good job of environmental justice to the local people, particular of the Delta region of Nigeria.
The alternatives as you see them.
Well, the alternatives are, like for instance, where we're right in back of us, the Sound, there is a proposed pipeline. It's called the Islander East Pipeline, and it's pretty much cleared most of the regulatory hurdles, etc. What's been holding it up is opposition from the state of Connecticut, and it'll bring a huge supply of natural gas into Long Island and the New York metro region. There are improvements in the Millennium Pipeline that are planned that'll bring additional supplies of natural gas to the region. And more to the point, if we do decide to go the LNG route, there are alternative technologies to the one that Shell and TransCanada are proposing. There's a project 115 miles off the coast of New Orleans. It's called Estuary of Energy Bridge, and the LNG tanker has the regasification capabilities aboard it. So what it essentially does, it hooks up with a funnel in the water, in the ocean, and it transports it to land. So that there are alternatives to what Broadwater is proposing.
What are your biggest concerns with this proposed Broadwater platform being put out there?
My biggest concern personally is a geopolitical concern. And, you know, as an old social studies teacher and a person interested in global politics, et cetera, it's just continued dependence upon another imported fossil fuel. And Broadwater likes to gloss over this and say it's just a necessary means to a transition to renewable energy. It'll complement the development of renewable energy. And I don't believe that's going to be the case.
John Orico is Senior Vice President of Broadwater Energy. John, what do you see as the need for this Broadwater facility?
In Long Island and the region in general, the cost of energy is particularly challenging. What we're seeing is that more and more electric generation, particularly what we're talking about, is being driven by natural gas. The natural gas is being used as a fuel of choice for generation of electricity. The region we have right now is being fueled by fuel oil, which is imported foreign oil, and coal, which is also imported into the region. And they're being burned in less efficient, old-style generation power plants. We need to clean those power plants up. We need to become more efficient. We need to have less pollution from emissions from these power plants. Yet, in order to do that, we need to have a new, diversified source of natural gas brought into this country, into this region. Our country has been using domestic supplied natural gas for many years. However, that's the growth in the production of that gas has stopped. In many cases, it's declining. So we have to turn to other ways of getting our natural gas. Importing natural gas through LNG would be one of those ways, and that's what Broadwater would do. It'd bring natural gas directly into this region to help solve this energy situation that we now face.
Now, what about the danger? I mean, you're talking about a huge super barge. You say in your literature the size of the Queen Mary II or the U.S. aircraft carrier Enterprise, with 6 billion cubic feet of liquefied natural gas in it at one time. I mean, like, what if there's an explosion of this thing?
Well, that's one of the concerns of many people have, and it's a very legitimate concern. How safe is this type of facility? Because it is natural gas, and it's not only natural gas. When we bring it in, it's cryogenic. It's at minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit. So we have to have special equipment, special handling for that. But you have to look at what that risk is that we have and how it's being dealt with. We've had over 50 years of experience throughout the world of using liquefied natural gas in many areas of the world that are more densely populated, places like Tokyo Harbor, where LNG is brought in every day. We also know from studies that the Coast Guard has done on Broadwater in particular that our location near the middle of the Sound, 9 miles from the nearest shoreline, is a very good location for a facility like this because it's away from everyone, and even under the worst circumstances, you have a localized effect. It's not under pressure, so this story that, as you said, of what happens in an explosion, it's not under pressure like your propane tank in your barbecue, so it won't explode. You'll have a very hot fire. It'll be very localized, but you won't have this massive explosion or this atomic ball that some people are looking at. It's not that type of facility. It's not that type of fuel. So many of these things you have to look at the actual facts and the substance behind what's being said in order to find out what specifically we're talking about here.
Now, Lord Levine of Lloyd's of London, he addressed a forum in Houston, your hometown, a couple of years ago, talked about the amount of energy equivalent to a small atomic bomb.
And that's one of the scare tactics that's oftentimes used. They say this is the equivalent of 10 atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima. Well, okay, it's the equivalent of a lot of energy. It's concentrated energy. But how it's released is the key. It's not released instantaneously like nuclear energy would be released. It would, as I said before, it would burn very rapidly and very hot, but it'd be localized. And so even the Coast Guard, in their detailed waterway suitability report, which they issued last fall, said that the area concern is within 500 meters of the facility if you had the worst possible instance out here. We're talking a facility that's located 9 miles from the nearest shoreline. You're talking about a mile, mile and a half that would be of concern if the worst possible situation happened. We're far removed from anything and makes it much safer in the event of something like that happening. However, I have to point out that the 50 years of history that we've had on operations of LNG terminals have been extremely successful, and we have not had any member of the public injured or killed by the operation of an LNG terminal.
Well, maybe not terminals. I mean, terminals are somewhat new, but you look at the history of LNG, whether it's Algeria, where dozens were killed, or Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, there's a laundry list of catastrophic accidents involving LNG, and now you're going to put it more so than ever at sea. And
again, you have to look at the facts and what you're looking at. People keep saying Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio happened during World War II. They weren't using the right materials. They didn't have the right type of design. That type of incident could not happen. We have LNG tanks here on Long Island, and many people don't realize it. We've been living with LNG for years. We have Keyspan has a tank right at Holtzville, just a few hundred yards off the Long Island Expressway. Been operating for years safely and effectively. There's tanks in New York City. There's tanks throughout New England. They're even building a new one in Connecticut to add to the LNG storage tanks that they have. And so these have proven to be very safe. When people start bringing up these points, yes, you look at some incidents that have occurred, but you have to look at what happened and can they happen today? And the fact of the matter is, no, LNG has had and continues to have, and we would ensure that Broadwater would have a safe, secure operation history.
Mr. Horitzko, in terms of political process, the key agency that seems to be in charge of where not just Broadwater but these other LNG terminals would go and giving them permission is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Now, the chair of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, is Joseph Kelleher. Before being appointed by President Bush to FERC, he was with the law firm of LaBeouf, Lamb, Green, and McCrae. And it turns out that LaBeouf, Lamb, Green, and McCrae are representing Broadwater before FERC. I mean, like, is this kosher?
This is an issue that, again, another red herring that people have brought up. Mr. Kelleher is a consummate professional. He has gone through the federal vetting process. He would not be sitting as the chairman of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission today if he had conflicts or could not be in that position. The fact of the matter is that he was there long before Broadwater came about, and he was only there for a short period of time. But, as I said before, he's gone through a vetting process. This is old news. People are trying to come up with some excuse for saying the FERC is not to be trusted. The fact of the matter is that LNG import terminals are international trade, and the movement of natural gas among the states is interstate commerce. So it falls within the federal government, and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is the lead federal agency reviewing this facility. But there are many state agencies who are also coordinating with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, and also doing other studies along with this. We have to get permits from the Department of Environmental Conservation. We have to get approval for the coastal zone management from the Department of State. We have to get the right-of-way, the ability to lay our pipeline and to set our mooring tower for this facility from the state of New York. They own the bottom land, the land underneath the sound, and the Office of General Services has to provide us with those leases. We pay the state of New York for a lease of that property. So there are many different avenues and ways in which the state of New York is participating actively in this review. And so to say somehow that FERC is corrupt or FERC is not able to review this process is fallacy. The other thing I'd point out is that the way FERC is set up is that it is a bipartisan commission, and the appointments are both Republican and Democrats that are sitting on that commission. So we have probably the best structure that you could possibly ask for in terms of a federal agency overseeing a controversial piece of infrastructure such as Broadwater.
There's been a number of stories, speaking of Kelleher's, well, here's one from Counterpunch, cozy relationship with the energy industry. I mean, others have not just Broadwater opponents, raised concerns about whether this is an independent fellow or one of these appointees of President Bush who are sort of the fox to guard the chicken coop.
Well, here again, I point you back to the fact that he's gone through the federal vetting process. He's gone through conflict of interest checks. He is a individual who has been sitting on many projects throughout the country. This is not just Broadwater, and no one has found any evidence whatsoever to show that he's impartial or unfair or somehow co-opted in favor of any projects.
In terms of your political campaign, this has been something. I mean, you've hired the former Suffolk County executive Robert Gaffney to help you to lobby. You've hired the former police commissioner of Suffolk County, John Gallagher. One of the things you point to in your literature is that you've hired Giuliani and Associates, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani's company. In fact, you also note that Bernard Carrick is on the team, or maybe was on the team now.
Matter of fact, Bernie Carrick was never actively involved in this. The activities around Bernie Carrick occurred before they actively engaged in reviewing Broadwater. And so what we have the Giuliani partnership doing is actually safety and security. When I talked before about the development of the emergency response plan, that's the area in which we have Giuliani partners looking at and helping us so that we can develop this emergency response plan, contact the emergency first responders on both sides of the Sound, and engage in that process. And that's the piece of the puzzle that we've have them working on. We have not been using these folks in any way as lobbyists. Even Bob Gaffney, who's now president of
Dowling
College and whatnot, they've helped us introduce us to various people here on Long Island who, certainly with people of that background and stature can get you in the door so you can start talking to folks, many of whom turned out to ultimately have opposed the project. But the fact of the matter is they weren't lobbying at all in the sense that they were trying to change laws or influence any legislation on the project.
Kind of what I'm trying to get at here, however, is that here, I mean, these are big oil companies, Shell and TransCanada. I mean, it's big oil. And you come to Long Island, and you have retained these people, and in the public relations sphere, you've retained some of the most powerful PR practitioners in this region, just roughly. I mean, you're not a public entity. I can't look at your records, but can you give us a ballpark of how much you've been spending annually for the last several years on lobbying and PR and this type of thing?
No, we don't give out those types of figures, but you have to remember we face enormous challenges trying to beat back the opposition, who are extremely talented and very effective in getting out their message. The problem is that we're coming into this area new. We weren't here before. This is a new infrastructure project, so you have to be able to talk to people, meet with the elected officials, meet with the government and business people. You have to meet with individual people, civic associations and whatnot. So that's all part of the engagement process that we undertake whenever you have to develop an infrastructure project, whether it be an LNG terminal, a gas pipeline, or a power plant. It all has to be done. And so that's part and parcel of what we're doing. It's nothing different than any other project, say the Caithness project on Long Island. Many people are familiar with that. They have to do the same thing, or they've gone through the same processes. They've been going through their permitting stage, and now they're under construction. So this is nothing unusual.
The one, below the federal government entity that could stop Broadwater is the state of New York, and the governor of the state of New York, Eliot Spitzer, is central to the New York position. Do you think you have Governor Spitzer in your corner at this point?
We don't know.
Senator Ken LaValle, this Broadwater project would be almost smack in the middle, the northern edge of your district. What do you think of it?
It's the wrong project at the wrong time in the wrong place. This project would be the beginning of the industrialization of Long Island Sound. And the reason I say the beginning, because once the Department of State puts their seal of approval that it is consistent with our coastal zone management plan, then it opens the gates to many other like projects. This project is bad environmentally. It's bad in terms of its safety. And Long Island, that would bear the brunt or greatest liability, gets very few benefits from it, because the natural gas from this, 85% goes to New York City and beyond. Long Island retains 15% of its benefit. So there really is no benefit there economically for us, energy-wise for us, and as I said, it would be an environmental disaster and a security disaster.
On the issue of security and security disaster, could you elaborate on your concerns?
I will. As a matter of fact, in one of the in the confirmation debate on the DEC Commissioner Pete Granis, I spoke about the Broadwater project in that confirmation discussion on the floor of the Senate. And Senator Leibel, who's the chair of our Homeland Security Committee, came over to me and he said, I listened to what you said. You are absolutely right. And he said, we have been doing some investigation of this, and we find that this would be a bullseye for terrorists, given one, where it's located. So the floating tanker itself would be a danger. Tankers coming in vis-a-vis the Millstone plant or Plum Island. So this would become what he feels is a tanker could come in and just ride right into Millstone or Plum Island. So there's a lot. We're going to be holding a hearing on this. Congressman Bishop has already held a hearing, and we know right now the Coast Guard does not have the resources. And Congressman tells me that unlike many other areas where companies can say, okay, we realize the government has this cost, we will pick up the cost, they cannot in this situation. So they are proscribed or prohibited from coming in and saying, well, we'll pick up the extra cost so that the Coast Guard can properly do this.
The state does have some power here.
Yes, it does.
Whether Spitzer will say no to this, do you have any sense?
Well, just to go back to the beginning of the session, I was holding up the governor's appointment as Secretary of State. He went to Senator Bruno and he said, tell Senator Laval that he can hold up her nomination all he wants, but I, the governor of the state, will make the decision on Broadwater. So he is in a very vital position. If we say that this is not compatible with our coastal management plan, we then send that decision to FERC and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, that we will essentially kill it unless there's a little caveat, unless it is not in the national interest. So that would mean that there's something at time of war that would be harmful to the nation, and no one sees that. So in essence, Governor Spitzer has his hand on the button that could kill this in a nanosecond.
Will Broadwater happen? And if it does, what will be the fate of the Long Island Sound? And what about the other Broadwater-like terminals planned for elsewhere in the United States? I'm Karl Grossman. This has been a special report on WVVH-TV. Thank you for watching.